Hi, it's Robbie, and it's a beautiful morning, and I took a walk in the garden. I thought, you know what? I just want to talk today about container gardening. There is nothing greater than container gardening. I'm telling you, if you haven't tried it, just give it a try. Just try it before you knock it. I mean, you want to grow on the ground and you're doing great, absolutely do that. That's what Gary did for a couple years. He loved it, and now he's changed. He's now collecting totes and buckets. This has been amazing. That's eggplant. You can probably only see 2, but there's more in there. It is full of flowers, and I've got to get these off today because there is more under here, and get some fried eggplant going. Yep, that is doing fantastic. As far as everything else you see here, I've talked about on my garden tour. These giant tomatoes, I picked one the other day. They're down there, last year's tomatoes. I haven't gotten to this yet. But the containers are so self-contained with water, and the leaves are falling, and I'm throwing leaves in there, that they're constantly creating their own soil. And now all the plants have bursted back into life. This has just been amazing without me even doing anything yet. I am going to do. I want to get my leeks out. I've got these 2. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I'm waiting for this one to go to seed so I can have my own leek seed in the fall that I'll plant. But this one, let's get this leaf off of here. This one I'm going to have to do something with very soon because these are not seeds. These grew. These are baby leeks growing, so I'm going to have to figure out if I want to save them, and we're going in the summer now. Probably have to get creative to see if I can save them and grow them now. This is old lettuce that you see here. This is amazing. This is all seed. I'm going to grow hundreds of lettuce. And I will pick the best and plant them, and I will have lettuce this summer because I did it last year and I will do it again. My squash are growing everywhere. The cucumbers, it was interesting to see this morning that the goldfinches were sitting on the leaves with powdery mildew and eating them. So there's something they're getting out of those leaves. More power to them. I haven't found any insects on them, so they're probably eating whatever they can find. Hummingbirds too have been flying around, and I'm going to get to my chair garden very, very soon. But this is just going fantastic. But here today I want to talk about maybe my rainbow garden. Let's talk a little bit about here. I don't want to just say it's the greatest garden to me because all of them have their own unique features. But this one has just been amazing. I can come sit down on my half-colored chair that I'm still painting. I can sit next to all these tomatoes growing and all these herbs growing in here, and sage and basil, purple basil, green basil, oregano. I've got pepper starting on the top now. Thyme is growing in there. And I've even got a tricolored sage, a cutting from another plant. Look at that, growing beautiful. This is all in buckets, and those buckets are uniquely designed where they're not going anywhere. This thing is stable. You say, oh no, you can't stack buckets. Let me tell you something. You can, and I'm stacking more there. This has been the easiest thing to take care of. And with the colors, for me, is beautiful. I have people that say, oh my gosh, did this accidentally happen? No, it'll look nicer when I clean up and get a lot of stuff off the ground, but I'm actually working in here today. This wasn't an accident. This was thought out. I did buy colored totes, because last year I didn't go anywhere, so I ordered a lot of different colors online. The chairs I painted. The paint that I got, I talked about, I get the tester paint from the stores. The hardware stores sell tester paint. It's cheap, a few bucks. And I bought only 3 colors, and you can mix them and do it the way you want. So you can mix the colors, by the way. And this has been just so fun. And when you paint the chairs, I've got chairs in my chair garden that I painted, I really don't know, maybe 10, 12 years ago, and they're still looking good. So some of these chairs, like, let's see, the green one I painted, the purple one I didn't paint this year. Not that one, because I think that one was painted about 8 years ago. And then you can mix and match. Look what I did here. Just took a bunch of leftover paint and painted this chair and kind of did a blend. So everything here is going good. I'm about ready. See how I do my totes? Loaded that up with branches and stuff on the bottom and leaves, and I'm going to get half of this moved. This is potato mint. It's trying to get out. Look at that. And I've got some lettuce that got in there, and I want to move it. It's too crowded because I want to be able to get a lot of potato mint. And the strawberries are doing fantastic. Everything's doing fantastic. Okay, we're not talking about papayas today. But what I'm going to set up and show you very soon is this, and I'm so excited about this. This setup is going to maintain this garden all through the summer and fall, and possibly whatever I'm growing in here in the winter. All I'm saying today is think about totes. Let's sit down and talk about that for a minute. I mean, look what I'm growing in this tote. I started some tomatoes, haven't done anything much with the tomatoes yet. They're just starting, but I have got a ton of broccoli. I keep picking this, by the way, so you don't have to say, oh, there's nothing in here. There's a lot. I cut them all down, and they are coming up everywhere. So I get a bunch of spears, throw them on a frying pan with a little butter, slightly warm them with the butter. Oh my gosh, they're so good. So we've been picking broccoli there, and yes, my Yorkie gets broccoli, don't worry. And there's broccoli there and broccoli there. And then of course the zucchini hasn't stopped. You worry about powdery mildew? Don't worry about it. Some of them don't make it on the squash. That's okay. This one did. This one did. That one is interesting because it was throwing a bunch of male flowers, but actually see, that's a female flower coming up now. So it is starting to throw female flowers, but all the male flowers were really fertilizing this one really good. I should say pollinating. So it worked out really well. Oh, here's another one. I didn't even see it. Look at that. I've got a pile of squash in the house. I can't use that much. They get so big, and I only can use a third or a half for one day. But let me tell you something. We've been having zucchini every single day. I get up in the morning and it's like, oh, you want an omelet? I grate up zucchini and put it in there. He doesn't know, and he doesn't care, and he loves it. So you put zucchini in an omelet. I put it in my enchiladas. I put it in everything. I make ground meat. I mix in more zucchini than meat. So you got a big platter, and you put that on spaghetti and enchiladas and lasagna, and you could use it whatever way you want. And you can fry it. You grate it up and you make the greatest fried patties. Like potato pancakes, zucchini pancakes. You like potato pancakes better than zucchini pancakes? Then mix in half potatoes. Grate up a potato, put the rest zucchini with some eggs, fry your patties, and they are so good you don't even know what it is because it will take over the flavor of the potatoes. Container gardening to me is so fun because you are in full control. You have full control over your garden. Be it a container, this is just I think it's a 17-gallon trough type container, a tub, and this has been fantastic. That's all my garlic. I now have basil coming up. So the garlic will die back, the basil will take over. There's some blueberries in there. I don't know if they'll make it, the plants, but I want to move those anyways into a different area because obviously they're not doing good in there. Think about it. Something doesn't do good, you pull it out and move it, or you move the whole container. I have found container gardening the easiest way to garden. 3 totes. 3 totes. They're what, 18 gallons, these totes. They come in different sizes. This one's a bigger one, this one's 30. But these are 18 gallons. 3 of them equal 1 raised bed that you buy online for $100 to $150. And these 3 totes, depending on where you get them, could cost you $15. Let's say $20. And you go, well, I'd rather have a raised bed. All right, so I spend $120 and I get a raised bed. And it's the size of 3 totes. That's fine. If you like raised beds, absolutely get raised beds. But here's the problem. And I talk about this all the time. You have to fill the entire raised bed with soil. You have to. You can't fill half and take care of half and then come back later. So if you're going to buy potting soil, it's going to cost you. Depending on what soil you want to get, cheap soil, you could probably fill a raised bed $30 to $50. You want to get expensive soil, organic soil, you could be looking at a couple $100 depending on how much you want to spend on soil. With a tote, and this goes for buckets too, if you're planting in buckets, you do one at a time. There's no hurry. You want to get your tomatoes in the ground right now, but you're not ready to plant the other stuff? You do 1 tote at a time, just 1 tote. So now the 1 tote, you're going to go around collecting leaves and stuff. You can put whatever you want on the bottom, toilet paper rolls, just whatever you want. You know, the cardboard from the middle of paper towels and shredded paper. Don't put too much shredded paper on the very bottom where your holes are because you could block your holes. On the bottom, I like putting pine cones, blocks of wood. You can put anything you want. If you want to keep it light, put big blocks of styrofoam if you got something. It doesn't break down, it doesn't go anywhere. Put that on the bottom and then start to put your leaves and your green and brown matter in the middle, and then on the top, go get yourself some potting soil You want to get expensive potting soil because your plants are going to be growing mainly on the top? Go get yourself expensive potting soil. Well, one tote's not going to cost you more than $10 to set up, and probably much less. I use one cheap bag of potting soil to do about 4 or 5 totes because I only put a small layer because I have leaves and other stuff. Or I have another tote set up. I throw leaves in there. I throw soil from the ground in there. Just keep throwing it in there and water it like it's alive, because it is. Your microbes are in there. They're alive. Earthworms find their way in there. And then you rob that one when you want to go set up another tote because you don't have any plants in there. Let me tell you something. You throw kitchen scraps with tomato seeds and stuff, they're going to grow. But you take from the other tote and move it in. And now you've got your own soil. You don't even have to buy anything. You're making your own soil as you're setting up your other containers. Very easy to do it in the tote, easier than a bucket. It gives you more room to go around and collect large leaves and cut this off and throw this in a tote and then continue to throw some potting soil on top. Because remember, nothing on the top is going to break down, so you have to have something on the top. When you're breaking down the leaves, you want to throw native soil. Just go around anywhere and collect native soil. If you got any flower pots outside, or your neighbor does, go lift up the small flower pot, grab a handful underneath. Don't worry, as long as they've watered it, there's earthworms under there and it will end up in your tote that you're getting ready to rob for soil. Just a thought. I can't say anything bad about totes. They hold water. They do not evaporate anywhere but one place, up. Keep that in mind. So if you're in an area that gets a lot of heat in the summer, it's going to evaporate one way, and that's the top. It can only evaporate up. It cannot evaporate from the sides. Okay? Water can't come through the plastic. These plastics are either a 2 and a 5, same grade that you find in the grocery stores that they use for food. It's food grade. So don't worry about that. Plastic won't break down until it hits about 150 to 200 degrees. And if it hits that high in your yard, then you got bigger problems than worrying about your tote. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that. Think about it. Your raised beds that you're buying online, they're plastic, by the way, just so you know that. So with the evaporation only coming from the top, even on the hottest days, a lot of times I don't have to water more than once every other day on the hottest days. In the winter, if it's raining, I don't have to water at all. So if you're getting rain, if you're in an area that's quite warm, you get a lot of rain, let me tell you something. A tote, either on the ground or on a chair, it drains. I know a lot of people that said they lost their garden because they had so much rain. 15 inches of rain, their garden just got submerged underwater. These are not water plants. They're right, they can't live underwater. But if you got your totes off the ground, they have to drain. Gravity is going to pull them. So your plants will love the rain. Rainwater is wonderful and will continue to drain and continue to grow. That's what I'm saying. I can't think of anything bad. I barely have to maintain them. I can sit down on a chair and maintain them. I can stand up and maintain them. I don't have to bend over and hurt my back. I walk through and at a glance, I can see all my plants. Everything is so easy to take care of. I mean, you can write the comments underneath why you don't like them. I know the biggest one is, oh, they're plastic. Who knows what's in your soil? Who knows what's coming out of the sky and falling into your soil? You can't worry about every little thing. The main thing is to get food growing that's healthy. And believe me, you can put your flowers in there too. I love layering. A lot of you will be saying, well, why do you have pots in there? Because it gives the plants a little independence. So I've got this growing in a pot, which is my broccoli. And then I've got tomatoes growing. Though the pot's got holes on the bottom and the broccoli will send its roots into the container, into the tote, the tomatoes will send their roots into the broccoli too if the broccoli's got something it wants. Maybe the soil's better. That's fine. Let them share. But they have a little bit of independence. The other thing is when you layer, when I water this pot, again, it can only evaporate under this small area. There's always going to be water under there because it really has to pull a lot to get to the top to evaporate. And so the tomato plant will never be out of water. It's going to put its roots under there. And also you can see, hey, she doesn't fill her totes. I don't fill them to the top. What do I need to fill them to the top for? I have never filled them to the top. They do sink down, but I still don't fill them to the top. This is about as far as I fill them. What you see. halfway, maybe a little more than halfway. And as they collapse and the plants are growing, or they're done growing, I can take that soil because it all turns, all these leaf matters, all this turns back in the soil. I'm making my own soil. I would not be able to afford the soils. People have asked me, how in the world do you afford to buy all this soil for your plants? Well, I'm not. I buy the cheapest. I buy what's on sale because I'm only putting it on the top. As I put it on the top, everything is breaking down underneath and making its own soil because I've put in leaves, kitchen scraps, which is food from the garden, including stuff you've cooked, got pushed to the back of the fridge, you forgot about it, you found it, what is it? It's moldy, goodness gracious, it doesn't matter what it is. The microbes want it, give it to them, dump it in a tote, dump it wherever you're going to compost. And then when you're ready to plant, put a small layer of potting soil, or if you've got good soil, take it from the ground. Just put something on the top and get your plants planted. I have tons of videos on that. Go check out what's going to work for you. But let me tell you something, this works for me. You're going to say, I can't grow anything. I have a bad thumb. It's just not going to work. You know, you don't have a green thumb. Let me tell you something. I had a really bad thumb. It never grew anything. But it didn't grow because of a couple different reasons. It didn't grow because, one, I didn't have the full interest in it to stop and think and analyze what was going on. And the other thing was, well, I was trying to grow a lot in the ground, and then I'm dealing with critters in the ground, roly-polies in the ground. I'm dealing with, worms, and everything is eating my garden. Well, I don't have to deal with all that here. I bring the birds in, and they pick off the little bit of insects, and I leave a lot. And it's all so self-contained, each one. There is no product on here of any type at all, nothing I have done to keep insects out, to get rid of insects. I haven't done anything. And there's nothing in here. I haven't sprayed. I haven't done anything. I'm getting plenty of food just the way it is. I don't have to worry about roly-polies. You can pick them out. You have roly-polies, take a cottage cheese container, cut the bottom, make a sleeve, put it around your plant, and roly-polies cannot climb up plastic. So if you put a sleeve around your plant, you're done with the roly-polies. You're done with cutworms. There's a lot of things that you can do to get rid of them. The only things I am bringing in is nature. I am bringing in the bees. This is what I want them to do. I want them to pollinate. I'm bringing in the birds. I want them to collect insects. And it works. All I'm saying is try it. If you're having wonderful luck on whatever you're doing, because you can compost and place in the ground too, then keep doing what you're doing. Absolutely. But if you're not having luck, like Gary's saying, I got rid of the rabbits by putting a little fence around my garden. So he eliminated the rabbit issue. I deal with the rabbits. They get a few things, but let them have a few things. He had a problem with the rabbits, and he got rid of that, but now he had gophers come back in, and it ate up a lot of his stuff, and he was really upset. They're tough to get rid of, especially when you live in a hilly area. So he went into totes, and now he found out it's the best thing in the world. I mean, look at my totes down there. Look at that. He decided that totes was the way to go. He's got so much stuff he's bringing in for me that whatever you don't eat becomes your soil again. It's just fantastic. He tried it and it worked. And he swore, if you go back to the old videos, you will hear, I will never grow in totes. I'm going to grow everything in the ground in my wood chips. Wood chips are wonderful. Don't worry, you don't get termites. Termites live in a solid piece of wood. They have to make tunnels. This isn't tunnels. They don't want it. Wood chips is wonderful. It makes the greatest soil in the world. It breaks down. It's got all your minerals and nutrients and your microbes eat it and everything. But the problem is, if you've got other critters in there, well, you can't get rid of them. You can't get rid of the rabbits. You can't get rid of the rodents and the insects and everything that live in nature. But you can. Sometimes when you grow in totes, buckets, or tubs. Because you now are in control, not nature. You are in control. And that's it. I need to be in control. I need to control what nature I want to come in. I need to control my water. I need to control a lot of different things. I can control where I'm planting my seeds. You throw it in the ground and you hit it with water, and birds come by, a rat comes by, they dig it up, and what you planted there somehow ended up over there. Well, that's because it got dug up and dragged around. It's not going to happen in containers. So that's kind of my food for thought. I am so excited with this. I like the color. I'm not done, but I'm almost done. And it's just, to me, it brings a smile to my face. I heard people that can see it have told me this is so beautiful. They smile every time they see it. That makes me feel good. I brought in hummingbirds. Don't worry if you get some fruit flies that you're composting and placing in your containers. The fruit flies are breaking everything down. That's part of nature. They're not going to hurt your plants. They're not going to eat the seeds. They're eating the matter that's supposed to be broke down. And their, let's say, feces, like your earthworms, are feeding your plants. Don't worry about that. And then you bring in hummingbirds. See? You bring in hummingbirds, like just sit by, because they're looking for any fruit flies, because that's what they eat. Your hummingbird nectar you put out is a very small part of their food. They need protein, they need pollen. That's what they need, the nectar from plants. So that's all I wanted to talk about today, because I actually came here and looked around at nature. I'm going to sit down and end this, and I thought, wow, all I need to do is clean this up a little bit, set up all my buckets the way I want. I'm going all into color, and I'm just going to kick back this summer. And all I have to do is grab a hose or a watering can, and I just go down and have all this here watered in less than 5 minutes. If you keep your containers together, think about maintenance. Think about where you're setting them up. If you've got a hose, set them up by a hose bib so you can just have a hose attached. If you don't have a hose, make sure you have a container where you could just grab, dip in a watering can, and go through and water everything. And if you make yourself a nice garden that is easy to maintain, I guarantee you will garden for life. And once you figure out what's going to work for you, everybody has it work different for them. You have to figure out what's going to work for you. Then you will just, not only will you garden for life, you will pass the word around and get other people to garden. And when you make your mistakes, like planting too many tomatoes in one container, you can share that with whoever you're helping and say, don't do that, or do it. Pull out the tomatoes you want, move them, which I'm doing, and then the rest, you may have to compost. I will have to decide in there what I want. Do I want the tomatoes to grow or that squash? I'll probably leave a couple tomatoes and the squash. But you do it the way you want. I am so excited that I got zucchini very early this year, because as I was composting in these containers in the cold, it was still creating such a small amount of heat that the seeds wanted to grow and the plants didn't know, and they thought it was spring even before it was spring. And I started getting all kinds of food out of them. So I don't know what you can say that's bad. And see, let me show you something real quick. That's a tile on the floor. Because you're going to say, what is this here? This is a tile. You know what I used this for in the beginning? This old tile? When I first started growing seeds, I would lay the tile on top of the soil, because the water could not evaporate through the tile. And it held water underneath. I don't have an empty, you know what we do? We have one over here. Just so you get an idea of what I was doing. Let me show you. So if I started planting something, I would just lay the tile down. I didn't have a pot. Now when I water in here, there's always going to be water under there. And if plants start to grow, this is an old cilantro plant. I threw some seeds in there. We'll see what happens. But now I have water being held underneath when you water, because water can't evaporate through that. So now it's evaporating through all this, but not here. That's why I use pots. So I hope I've explained why I love totes. I am not trying to sell you on totes. I have no stock. I should. I don't own stock or anything. I have nothing. I'm so excited to share this, because take it from one that struggled for years gardening. I have gardened my whole life since a little kid. And I did struggle. Something come eat it. I planted in the ground. I put all this time in there. Things would happen. Well, now I have control of how I'm feeding them, from rotting leaves. If I want to feed them, I know that when I compost in place and I set up my totes, that plant food in there really will last for the entire life of these vegetable plants. I don't really have to do anything. Once these squash are done, they're done, and the plant goes back in. You compost it, put somewhere, whatever you want from another tote, some soil compost on top of the dried out plant, or soil from the ground, or get yourself some potting soil, and you just keep going and going and going. You're fortunate enough to raise it so high that it's too high, take some of that out and use it somewhere else, because it's the greatest soil that you will ever have. You made it in your yard, and it's off the ground. I know that there's some people in other countries that have told me they couldn't garden because their soil was toxic. and they didn't know what they were going to do. And when they found this, they started this, and they've said how grateful they are. How grateful, because now they've got so much food, they don't even know what to do with it, and they're sharing with their family and friends because now they have control. They're making their own. Generally, your plants that are growing are clean, so when you're picking the leaves and you're composting, you're good, but you don't know what's in the soil. So you are in full control of your garden, and that's why I just love it. That's all I'm trying to pass along. Isn't this pretty? I think it's so pretty. And of course, just keeping them dark, and the dark totes. I like the dark totes. Look at that. Isn't that pretty down there? Up against the wall? That is just pretty too. You don't have to go for color. And of course, you can put them straight on the ground. And with the holes, they all have holes. You want to have holes. You just decide if you've got pine trees growing and pepper trees growing, then keep in mind they will rob the water out of your totes. If you've got holes on the bottom, they will send their roots up. So if you've got a root problem, another problem Gary had, then put the holes just above the bottom, because the roots cannot come out into the air from the trees and go into your totes. So raise it 1 to 2 inches. It doesn't matter if there's some water in there. If the plants don't want the 2 inches of water on the bottom, they'll keep their roots up. They won't go to the bottom. I think there's a solution for everything you could possibly have if you've got totes. Really, I think you can pretty much prevent almost any issue you may have if you are planting in containers. So that's the thing that is so great with that, because you can come up, you got a problem with rodents, no matter what, insects, birds, something, tool it. You got a problem with squash bugs and you can't get rid of them, then drop your tool in there, make sure there's holes in there, do what I told you, make sure the soil is clean, plant your squash and tent the whole thing and tie it on the top. Make sure nothing can get in there. You will have to hand pollinate your own squash. And if you've got a lot of female squash coming up, the little tiny ones, they only get about that big, you can eat those. Don't throw those away. Remember, people eat zucchini flowers. Oh, that's good. You can bread them and fry them. So it's not a total loss, but hand pollinating is the easiest thing. I really think if you step back, think about your problem, I think you can almost fix any issue you've got if you cannot grow in the ground. But let me end this by saying, no matter what, if whatever you are doing is working, I don't care what you're doing. If it's working, then keep doing what you're doing. So I think I've talked your ear off. I think I'm going to go in and make breakfast. Work. This is so funny. I got to walk over here and end this here. So I've got this lid that I make, and somebody decided, look, I can come and sit on top of the lid and enjoy myself. Isn't that funny? I just thought it was so cute, the lizards. So that's it. Just wanted to come in here, say hello, think about what issues you have, and think about if you can fix your issues by maybe changing or trying something different when it comes to growing. And think about what will work for you. Buckets are easier to move if you've got to move them in the winter and you don't want to leave them out. They're fantastic. These lock and they're not going anywhere. And that yellow one waters everything. Again, it can only evaporate through the top. And for being in Southern California, and I know a lot of desert areas, the biggest problem is when the heat comes in, everything dries out. And if you don't have any moisture in your containers, your plants will die. So there has to be moisture in the containers. Don't worry about your plants drooping in the heat, because when the sun goes down and as the sun starts to drop, as long as there's moisture in the containers, the plants are doing this to release a lot of water out of their leaves so they don't burn. They will pop back up at the end of the day, and that's what mine do. I come out here, if it's 100 degrees, they look like they're dying, they're all drooped over, and then as soon as the sun drops down, they pop back up. And that's what's great. And that little rabbit, he wants to come in my garden, that's fine, because guess what? He can't get into the chairs. But he does get into the bottom buckets. But I let him. He lives here. He's staying here because the hawks are nesting in the trees, and he knows he's safe in my garden. So with that, hope I gave you something to think about when it comes to container gardening and vertical gardening, because that's what this is, vertical gardening. And I hope I can get you to try to garden. Isn't this cool? These are peppers starting. This has to go. And by the way, your containers are the best place to propagate. Put them in a cup and sit them in there and act as layering, and you'll see the roots coming out of a paper cup, and you know that this plant, this rosemary, is ready to get into its own pot, its own container, and I didn't even have to do anything. I didn't have to take care of it. Just did a cutting and forgot about it. So you can use your totes, your buckets, your troughs, your tubs to also propagate, whether you put the plant straight into the soil or in its own pot. And as soon as you know it's rooted, you can move it somewhere else. So with that, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Try to garden if you're not gardening. Just try it. And don't forget to eat what you grow. Bye-bye, everybody.